Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Friday, July 16th, and this is virtual lunch number 344. I'm honored today that Kevin Brinig, the co-founder and CEO of LitLingo, is our guest. And this is part of our continuing series on optimizing communication. Hi, Kevin. How you doing?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a privilege. Kevin, tell us about your background and just the genesis of LitLingo.
It almost goes to my childhood. I like to think that protracted litigation has been part of my family since I was a kid. My dad ran a litigation accounting firm for 40 years. So we talked about cases at the dinner table. This is an interesting concept. You would never think that people would fight over this. And lo and behold, 3-4 years later, you spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars litigating over something. That always struck me as fascinating. As a kid, you're like, man, that's a lot of money. How can people continue to do this forever and ever? I went the tech route. I'm not the accountant type, but really just seeing in the business world, every day operating in the business world, recognizing that things you say have implications that a lawyer would recognize, but someone who's not a lawyer, I'm just trying to do my job. Really, technology in the last few years has moved in a direction that allows NLP and AI, what the baseline technology has become just in the last 3 or 4 years, has allowed the innovation to move into a real-time world. And that's the opportunity that we saw, and it was really exciting for Todd and I when we founded the company. I joined Uber when it was a couple hundred people. I think I left when it was about 25,000. Just watching that company grow, it's adorable when you think, oh yeah, we do training. Well, we hired 500 people last week. So whatever training you did last Tuesday, it doesn't work anymore. And operating at essentially new businesses where this isn't replacing an existing business. It's a technological solution to a problem that technology has never been applied to before. So obviously you see massive growth there, but you end up with a trail of risk. I think that's true of every business where everyone comes to work trying to do their best work and have the best mentality of making the world a better place with what they're doing. And if you're capable of making uncareful mistakes, that's a pain point that will either hurt the firm, hurt you, just cause distraction. If companies have the ability to do that or to innovate and innovate as quickly as they would like without that trailing risk, that's incredible value. If the confounding discussion is more of onboarding training versus out of band quarterly training, if everyone on onboarding, when you're going to bring in on new employees, you'd ideally put them through the same training. If you have a quarterly training that you happened to do last week and you hired 500 people the next week, you got to wait a quarter for them to get that training again. The training industry is very interesting because it's absolutely necessary, not only for improving your career, improving your performance at work, but again, from a discoverability perspective, understanding that there are things that you don't know that are important. I think of early in my career getting Foreign Corrupt Practices Act training. One of the things that LitLingo serves to inject knowledge into that is that it can act as a real-time training mechanism. So whether you had that training or not, whether you forget it or not, the system can help you in a guardrails way to say, actually, you might be saying something that has implications beyond what you might know. Here's a link back to the training, or here's a video, or if you have questions, you can ask this person. If you look at communication, it is fundamentally a tool, almost in the anthropological way. Human beings developed as a tool to solve problems, and everything else is an implementation thereof. And human beings will adopt that. So you see things like Slack, Twitter, TikTok, they're developed and adopted at differing rates, but we're constantly hunting for a better way to communicate because it really defines our culture, not at a country level, but at a global level, and then at a sub-level of organizations, even at a local level in a nuclear family. That's how we think about communication. But when you adopt new tools, you create a new environment. You consider Slack as an ephemeral tool. It is not. Anyone in the e-discovery space, which many of you have played in, knows that we have retention policies there and that stuff will be saved. In the legal field, if you're an internal counsel at a company, you've had 5 tools in your tool chest to solve for essentially mitigating risk as the future comes. Those tools are essentially, you can hire more lawyers, you can engage external counsel, you can use litigation as a tool, so you can buy e-discovery software, you can do managed review. The 4th tool, which is surprising and saddening, is settlements. Like, we'll just pay you to go away. That is a tool that folks use right now. And then the last one is sticking your head in the sand and hoping nothing's going wrong. So those are the 5 things that lawyers are capable of doing with the existing technology. Don't get me wrong, those are good options. This is a solved problem. There are solutions. Are the solutions perfect? Absolutely not. Are they ideal? Probably not close. And so if you look at those 5 things, they're all retroactive and they're all expensive. So we like to look at it as in a proactive approach. You can be cheap and proactive, and that's better. So that's fundamentally how we look at risk. As a lawyer, you have enough to do. It's not your job to understand the technological landscape of the world and like, what's the new hot thing? That is, in Silicon Valley, they often talked about early adopters and just a person that would buy the newest Apple product just because, and you don't even know if it's good yet. And that's just a personality type. And that's often folks that are just into the newest thing. And if you put all those people on a graph and understand their behavior, there's been a lot of research about how you get your early adopters and they'll buy whatever you make. And then you end up, they're influencing other folks that are more risk averse and will buy something later down the line. And then eventually, if you do everything right, you'll adopt across a broader user base. The really interesting thing is everyone thinks of legal as a dodgy, older industry. And these aren't my words. This is everyone talking about legal stuff. And I think that's ridiculous. Lawyers are some of the most innovative and creative people of all time. You're creating an argument. Fundamentally, that's what you're doing, or you're forecasting future risk or thinking about just things in a very creative way. What's been most surprising to me is being able to unlock people's understanding of what's possible. So say, hey, we're actually technologically capable of doing this. And that moment to folks is very, very exciting. That's surprising, where there's not a blog that everyone in the country reads that's, here are the newest things that you need to know about. That doesn't really exist for any industry. So just being able to surprise people with where the technology has come. It's really interesting. I've worked at amazing companies, I've had amazing bosses, and I've had mediocre bosses. I'm an optimist, so I fundamentally think that everyone comes to work to do amazing things and spend their time making a dent in the world and having an impact. And so we've tried to set up our company to ensure that everyone has that feeling constantly. We're about half remote, right? That remote experience of workers should be identical to the experience in the office. We're doing headshots. Our remote workers aren't here, so we're setting that up for them. These kinds of things where you really take the time to put yourself in the folks that you work with, in their shoes, and think about what it's like to be them. Truly think about that for a really long time. I really like to lead in that way. One, because it's obvious that we're doing it as a leadership team. People can see that we're doing it, and then they ideally see the results. So really it's about the stakeholders, which are not only our customers, but folks that work here every day and decide to wake up in the morning and come to work again and again and again every day. I tell my employees, if there's ever a day where you wake up and you do not want to come to the office, the first thing you should do is call me and we'll talk about it. Like, why? What are we not doing? And how can we make your life better? You're going to spend a third of your time working. So it better be a good third. So that's how I look at it. I'm a first-time CEO. I'd like to say that I'm giving it my best and trying to think as intelligent as I can about these types of problems. But obviously, I'm open to learning. If anyone has any insights, I'd love to hear them as well. People worried about risk, particularly, and people worried about communications. Worry is a little bit of a strong word, but people think about it and try and optimize. If it's a massive company, they're worried about being slow. You can't send every email to the lawyers for approval. So how do we allow folks to really run as fast as they can and avoid disruption and really move quickly? That's the big company world. And the smaller company world, it's how do we make sure that we're doing the right thing? And is there expertise that the tool has that we might not have thought of yet that we can just get out of the box? I don't think that they think about, oh, the world has been disrupted and massive changes happened. Obviously, it's an indicator and it's something that they take into their calculus, but it's not, oh, I'm all of a sudden going to think about this. The folks that we talk to have been thinking about this for a very long time. We are a new technologically driven solution to a problem that they've had for a very long time. They think that's really exciting.
Kevin Brinig, everybody. This is great. Kevin, look, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Thanks to LitLingo for supporting this series on optimizing communication.
Thank you so much for having me.